Disney has spent over $10 billion on Star Wars, beginning with the purchase of Lucasfilm back in 2012, followed by a couple of $1 billion in 2 theme parks and a now failed hotel, the Galactic StarCruiser. They've spent nearly $3 billion shooting and marketing 5 films into theaters and billions more since then, fleshing out their presence on Disney+. Ahsoka is supposed to be the latest big thing for Star Wars, Lucasfilm, and Disney. And quite frankly, it doesn't seem like it's bearing out the way Disney hoped. And now we have the second week of Ahsoka in the till, according to Nielsen, and it's not that good. If these shows were actually performing like they should be, then Bob Iger would not be looking to slash and cut these things down to the bone. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video, not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias. Join us on Sundays live at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here for the big show. And of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Yesterday afternoon, the latest numbers from Nielsen for streaming content dropped. And of course, this is for the week of August 28th through September 3rd. This would have been the second week that Ahsoka was available on Disney+. And as you can see, it's not even on the list. In the overall streaming category chart, Big Bang Theory rounded out the top 10, coming in with 590 million minutes watched. One Piece made a fairly strong debut there at 1.3 billion minutes. Now, granted, it had nearly 8 hours of runtime that dropped along with it. However, that drops like all Netflix stuff on a Friday, so a much shorter window to measure time watched during that week than, say, a show that dropped on a Tuesday night in prime time, like Disney does with Ahsoka. But also, as we found out as time went on, the hype for One Piece built after that opening weekend, as it got a tremendous amount of positive word of mouth and drove new audiences in. It'll be interesting to see what Nielsen measures in the second and third and fourth weeks of One Piece. If we hop over to original content, this is where Ahsoka certainly should show up, and it does, at the number 5 spot. Disney Plus, Ahsoka, 3 episodes out, 487 million minutes watched. As a reminder, on Ahsoka's premiere week, it came out with 2 episodes totaling nearly 100 minutes of available runtime, and that clocked in at 829 million minutes. And thanks to Mac, now it's known on Twitter for keeping these archived. But if we look back at this week, to be fair, the latest episode of Ahsoka only had about 35 minutes of available runtime, so we would expect a drawback from the first week, but not quite this much. And the reason that's a problem is because you would otherwise have to assume that everybody who wanted to get into this show watched both episodes in those first 6 days of release before the Nielsen charts rolled over to week 2 for Ahsoka on Monday at midnight. And let's remind everybody of this press release from the Walt Disney Company exactly 1 month ago today. On August 29th, Ahsoka draws 14 million views for first episode, which sounds like a great number if that were in the US or even North America alone, but it wasn't. That was a global figure. And let's not forget that Disney Plus has a massive global footprint on par with Netflix. It's not like Peacock or Paramount Plus, for example, whose bulk of subscribers are in North America. They have very little, if any, footprint outside of the US and Canada. Disney Plus, on the other hand, has nearly 100 million subscribers that aren't in North America, and nearly 150 million in total. And then there's the question of how many times were those first 2 episodes rewatched in this second measurement week to get up to episode 3, or how many new people came in this week having never seen episode 1 and 2 in the first week of release and catching it now. All of that factors into that 487 million minutes watched, meaning that that number is not strictly the third episode. That's the cumulative total of every bit of consumption of Ahsoka from Monday morning at midnight through the end of the second week. To give you an example, let's say 15% of that watch time, that 487 million minutes, were people who either watched the first 2 episodes for the first time or people who went back and reconsumed those first 2 episodes a second time in anticipation of watching the third, that brings the actual watch time for this third episode way down. And that's at only 15%. Let's say that number was 25%. A lot of Star Wars fans out there, the diehards that will watch anything that Disney puts out, are going to rewatch these programs over and over again. And it's not comparable to a binge model like, say, Netflix does with One Piece. 8 episodes, 8 hours of content. There's not a whole lot of rewatching going on during those first couple of weeks because it takes people time to get through those models. Even though they're binge dropped, not everybody binges 8 straight hours of content all within the first few days of release. In fact, it's a relatively small percentage. It takes most people a week or two to get through that. But with something like Ahsoka, 97 minutes of runtime between the first 2 episodes in its premiere week, that's basically a movie that should be easily consumed all in one sitting, and probably rewatched by the most ardent fans the next week before the third episode comes out. And the problem is something even Eric Kane over at Forbes magazine observes in a recent article that he posted. Eric says, "It's been quite a wild ride watching the latest Star Wars show on Disney+. The first few episodes were simply not very good, filled with janky dialogue, poor pacing, and oddly wooden characters." Now, to be fair, he also goes on to say that something changed in episode 4 where the pacing picked up and the action got better, and he started getting more connected with the characters in a way that he previously had not through the first 3 episodes. The problem, of course, with this is that Eric Kane is a reviewer for Forbes. This is his job, to sit through this stuff and watch it. Most normies out there that are just tuning in because something says Star Wars on it are not going to have the same reaction. Meaning that if they got bored in the first 2 episodes, the first week that it came out, they probably headed out the door and didn't come back for episode 3. And quite frankly, the numbers here on Nielsen seem to be bearing that theory out. Something that we talked about after we saw the first Ahsoka numbers come from Nielsen and those from Samba TV, which clocked Ahsoka in as the worst performing Star Wars Disney Plus show to date. What all this means is that Disney is continuing to spend far too much money on something like Ahsoka, rumored to be somewhere around $20+ million per episode. If we look at recent entries from the Marvel Cinematic Universe and from Lucasfilm on Disney Plus productions, they're all coming in around $200 million+ in total. Those are the kind of budgets that shows like The Rings of Power or House of the Dragon are produced with. And of course, House of the Dragon pulled in far more viewers than anything Marvel or Star Wars has put out on Disney Plus. You can throw Stranger Things in there as well. Similar budget to the Star Wars shows with a ton more viewership. But the point is, if you're going to spend that kind of capital on creating a dozen shows for Disney Plus, and each and every time they come in with that kind of budget, they have got to perform. Disney Plus should be growing. It's not. It's receding. The viewership on Disney Plus is shifting, meaning that as more new subscribers have come in over the last couple of years, the ratings and viewership for these Star Wars and Marvel shows have either stagnated or have retreated. And Bob Iger seemed to recently make clear that cuts were coming to a lot of Disney Plus content, including Marvel and perhaps Star Wars next, not only on the number of shows that hit the streaming service, but also on the budgets that they allocate to each show that does get greenlit. If these shows were actually performing like they should be, then Bob Iger would not be looking to slash and cut these things down to the bone. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Are you still watching Ahsoka if you even started it at all? If you are, tell me why. If you're not, tell me why not. I think the numbers for Ahsoka will certainly pick up as the episode 4, 5, and 6 come in, where we get introductions of other characters like Hayden Christensen coming back as Anakin, and of course Thrawn himself. But that doesn't mean that the show is quote-unquote saved. It will probably mean that the people who are still hanging around to watch it are watching those episodes multiple times to get happy watching things like Hayden Christensen and Thrawn show up. And that means the audience is not expanding. The shows are just simply being reconsumed by an ever-shrinking audience. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.